fellow Patriots. Welcome back to our channel. Let's go ahead and jump into this exciting time that we're in, right? With the Trump getting ready to take on over, right? So my mother and I often talk about Trump's greatest opportunity regarding his first term. And, you know, it was essentially some of the people that he picked just were absolutely the wrong people to have in someone's administration. You know, there was a report, I remember reading one of these leftist news articles, and it said Trump wants to drain the swamp, but keeps adding swamp creatures to his administration. I thought to myself, this seems like a fair criticism based on some of the selections that were being made. Just for example, selections like, you know, lame duck Jeff Sessions, who recused himself once the Russia hoax story started coming around, and then that was pretty much it. You know, he's the first person that jumped out of me as a wrong person to have. Imagine having an attorney general, and at the moment something goes wrong, he backs away, right? And that's exactly what took place with Jeff Sessions. Then you had warmonger John Bolton, right? Another guy, was a terrible pick. William Barr had me fooled. You know, he talked a good game on Capitol Hill, but then as soon as, you know, Trump lost the election, the guy jumped ship. He resigns, and leaving, you know, Trump essentially all alone in his biggest moment of need, if you will, right? So that wasn't good. That didn't leave a good taste in my mouth. And then you've got Mike Pence, right, who will forever be known as the Republican Judas for many of us, right? I think this time around, though, we've already begun to see some massive announcements that are pretty much sending shockwaves down the spines of the left and some fake Republicans as well. Now, about a week prior to the election, Trump went on the Joe Rogan podcast, which, you know, set the media ablaze due to, you know, Joe Rogan's popularity and how he wasn't going to promote Trump or something like that. So when Trump actually came on, it was big news, right? So during the 3-hour interview, Joe does bring up this very same topic about, you know, some of, you know, maybe the look back, you have regrets, etc. And then here's what Trump says in response. Let's take a look at the first video.
So you're in there, you have 10,000 appointments you have to make, like, so you're getting advice from people. And at one point in time, did you have a moment in time where you realized, like, these are bad choices? Like, some of these people I shouldn't have had in there.
Oh, yeah. I think, so the one question that you'll ask me, that I think you'll ask me, that people seem to ask, and I always come up with the same answer. The one mistake, because I had a lot of success, great economy, great everything. Everything was great. The military, we rebuilt it, biggest tax cuts in history, all this stuff. We had a great presidency. 3 Supreme Court justices. Most people get none. You know, you pick them young. This way they're there for 50 years, right? So, you know, even if a president is there for 8 years, oftentimes they never have a chance. I had 3. It was sort of the luck of the draw. But I will say that it always comes back to the same answer. The biggest mistake I made was I picked some people. I picked some great people, you know, but you don't think about that. I picked some people that I shouldn't have picked. I picked a few people that I shouldn't have picked. And
neocons?
Yeah, neocons, or bad people, or disloyal people, or
people that were just
people
bad,
that were into the
people got bad advice.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're reading about them a little bit today. A guy like Kelly, who was a bully, but a weak person. You know more about bullies than anybody probably around, because you deal in a certain sport where the bullies are exposed very quickly.
Yeah.
But he's bad. Bolton was an idiot, but he was great for me, because I'd go in with a guy like a John Bolton. You know John Bolton. A friend of mine called me up. I was picking Bolton, and he's a very smart guy. His name is Phil Ruffin. He's a very rich guy from Las Vegas. He's a great card player. He doesn't play cards, but he's a great player. He's just a natural. Got poker sense, right? Good old poker sense. And Phil Ruffin is a very, very wise kind of a guy, and one of the richest people around, and has had great success and understands people. So it was in that I was picking Bolton, or I picked Bolton. He called up. He said, "Don't pick him. Why, he's a bad guy. Now, he wasn't in politics at all. He's in various businesses. He said, he's a bad guy. He's just, it always works out bad with that guy. And I said, oh, man, I wish you told me this 2 weeks ago. I already hired him. He's here. And he was right. But he was good in a certain way. He's a nut job. And every time I had to deal with a country, when they saw this whack job standing behind me, they said, oh, man, Trump's going to go to war with us. He was with Bush when they went stupidly into the Middle East.
As stated in my opening monologue, Trump had some bad picks that hurt his presidency and actually ended up helping Democrats instead of the American people. Now, about a week and a half ago, Trump began announcing some of the people that he wanted, part of his second administration. And it felt like a nonstop barrage of announcements. And every pick had the left going insane. They were outraged, right? Here, let's just recap. Here are some of the choices. This is a little bit outdated. This is as of Sunday, so it's a little bit outdated. But just to give you a sample of some of the people that he picked in the prior week.
And we begin this Sunday morning with the blockbuster cabinet nominations and appointments announced this week. President-elect Trump nominating former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz to be U.S. Attorney General. Iraq and Afghanistan veteran and Fox News host Pete Hegseth to be Defense Secretary, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be Health and Human Services Secretary. All of this following earlier announcements, including South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem for Homeland Security Secretary, Florida Senator Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, and veteran and former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence. President Trump's nominations were met with fierce hostility and backlash from Democrats and the mainstream media.
So it comes as no surprise that the left is going bonkers for picks such as, Tom Holland. He wasn't mentioned there because he was mentioned prior to that. He's been appointed the new border czar. Now, I've tracked this guy for the past almost 10 years. This guy has been stellar prior to Trump, during Trump, post-Trump, all the way up until now. I mean, he has been really stern when it comes to the border and how he plans to defend it, or what United States should be doing to defend it, and so on and so forth. So I absolutely think he's the right guy for the job. And it's exactly why the left is going insane. And it's so interesting to watch them go insane because the left is essentially championing illegal immigration, right? It seems like they are more focused on leaving the border open and allowing everybody to come in than securing the Americans within, which is absolutely insane. But naturally, because, Tom Holland is such a no-nonsense type of guy, the inevitable chance of white supremacy and xenophobia, spread across the mainstream media. And it just proves, by them doing that, it proves that they've learned nothing since the loss of November the 5th. They're absolutely doing the exact same things that cost them the election. Whatever. Now, I'm not complaining because let them keep going down that route. It just means more victories for us. Now, in addition to Tom, the left is going crazy, for Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, remember, we covered this before. Tulsi Gabbard was placed on some type of a watch list by the government, right, as a threat. It's absolutely insane that they would do that to a one of their own, because this was, if I'm not mistaken, prior to her jumping ship, or it might have been. And when I say jumping ship, meaning leaving the Democratic Party, it might have been when she did leave the Democratic Party and she became an independent, but it was definitely before she became a Republican, which was just 3 weeks ago or something like that. So Tulsi's one. Elon Musk, the left is absolutely insane ever since Elon bought Twitter. RFK, there's a number of people that don't want to, that are have questions and doubts about RFK. And then most noticeable is Pete Hegseth, right? The left seems to be going crazy over Pete. Pete is over from Fox News, and then the one that both sides are going crazy for is Matt Gaetz, who was, as you heard, selected as Attorney General. Now, in addition to the left's pushback, Trump is getting pushback from the right as well. Some Republicans immediately began crying about Trump picking Gaetz as his Attorney General, and have proceeded to kind of stonewall Trump's nomination, even before the hearings have already started. Now, they managed to cry so much that within a week's time of Trump nominating Gaetz, the Republicans have managed to get Gates to withdraw himself from consideration of Attorney General. That just happened just this week. It was like maybe 4 days ago, 5 days ago. The Republicans have managed to get Gates to withdraw himself so quickly. It's unbelievable. Now, the primary reason is due to accusations that arose towards Gates of sexual misconduct during, around 2021 and 2022 during the midterm elections. Now, Matt gave several interviews and fought to clear his name. Now, given the fact that this current administration loves to target Republicans, this would have been an easy case for Biden's DOJ to go after if there had been evidence, if it had been true, and yet it didn't happen. Let's take a listen here and see some of the facts that led to this situation.
And by the way, the smear campaign aimed at Matt Gaetz involving the alleged 17-year-old girl and supposed parties stem from this guy, Joel Greenberg, who was the tax collector, you can't make this up, of Seminole County, Florida, where Matt Gaetz lives. And the two became acquaintances, maybe even friends. But it turns out that Joel Greenberg was a complete con man and dirtbag and pled guilty to numerous federal charges, including the very accusations that they're trying to pin on Matt Gaetz, because it was actually Joel Greenberg who was doing those things and admitted it. But then once they had him, then a group tried to use this case in order to extort Matt Gaetz, and he wasn't going along with it. The FBI got involved, arrested the extortionist. The Biden Justice Department under Merrick Garland investigated Matt Gaetz for these allegations and found no wrongdoing. Joel Greenberg was trying to get a plea deal to lessen his charges and his sentencing by claiming that Matt Gaetz was involved in the activities that he himself was involved in. And like I said, the fact that Merrick Garland didn't even charge Matt Gaetz shows that there's zero evidence he did anything wrong.
So it's amazing how they managed to do this amongst one of their own, and yet they can't seem to come together to stop any of the left's agendas. Isn't that insane? Like, why is that? Why did so many make this strong stance against Matt, but they can't make that strong stance against Biden or anybody else? But here's my suspicion as to why specifically when it comes to Gaetz.
Congressman Gaetz offered to take us on a tour.
So one of the committees where people have a lot of information is the Appropriations Committee, because they can view almost any vector of government funding. And so, this is Mr. Rutherford's office. He's on the Ethics Committee and the Appropriations Committee. 152 stock trades. Stocks go through the roof. And, actually bought Raytheon stock the day that Russia invaded Ukraine.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, imagine if every American could make money off of war.
Yeah, setting aside the whole shame and ethics questions. How many more on our hit list here?
There are a few more. I wish there were fewer on the hit list. I wish we could only stop at one or two offices, but as it turns out, energy is a sector that sees a lot of congressional stock trading.
Sure.
And we have members who are on the Energy Subcommittee of Appropriations, like Michael Guest, chairman of the Ethics Committee, and he's traded somewhere between tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars in energy stocks. He's been buying online gaming stocks and just making a killing on them. So you would think that the people that were on the Ethics Committee would be your best allies in this fight, but indeed they're some of the most prolific traders. And not only trading, but in the case of Mr. Guest, trading in an area where he has access to energy information more so than almost any other American.
And no indication that he wants to maybe slow down, pump the brakes, recognize that there might be some appearance of impropriety here.
It seems as though the pace is only accelerating.
All right.
So in that video, Matt Gaetz is showcasing the questionable and, in my opinion, corruption within the Republican Party. Unlike the left, if I call out corruption on the opposing side, then I should also call out the corruption on my own side, else I'm a hypocrite, right? And that's what the left does. They turn the cheek to all the stuff that they do, that their own party does, while pointing the finger on the other side of the aisle. We tend to do the same thing, but I'm not one of those people. If there's wrongdoing on, I don't care what side it is, it has to be called out. Now, here's what's interesting. Matt Gaetz, when he was tapped for Attorney General, he resigns. Why? Because there's an ethics report that's going on. Republicans, or the House, I should say, has an ethics report against him. And I don't know. There's rumors that say that Matt stepped down. He resigned as a member of Congress to prevent the ethics report from being released, or so on and so forth. Here's the interesting part. Who's doing the ethics report? Is it the same people that we just saw in the video? Because there's something there. I mean, you have an issue there, right? He outed these people, and now these people are turning around to write an ethics report, which is obviously damning. So damning that it got him to not only withdraw from Attorney General nomination, but also not return to Congress. According to reports just yesterday, Matt Gaetz is not going to return to Congress. He's not going to run. So the swamp got him really good with something. I don't know what it is. If unless he's like holding off for something else, but if he's not holding off, or if he doesn't hold off for something else, the swamp really got to him. Whatever they had on him, it was enough to get him to stop. Now, again, I'm not saying that Matt's is guilty, because the DOJ investigated him, and they would have loved to have smeared this guy, this MAGA guy. They would have absolutely loved to have smeared him and do whatever they can to silence him, since he was such a strong person. But they didn't, because they couldn't find anything. They couldn't attach anything. So I'm really curious to see what these swamp-like creatures in the Republican Party have put together that silenced Matt Gaetz and had him apparently withdraw completely from politics altogether. At least at the moment, that's what it seems. Heck, even Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted at his X account, "What's the real reason you backed out?" Right? So interesting stuff to see what happens going forward. Now, in addition to this type of action, though, Matt was responsible for getting former Speaker Kevin McCarthy removed as Speaker of the House back last year, beginning of 2023. Gaetz, along with about 20 other House Republicans, did not want to vote for McCarthy as Speaker. They eventually gave him the vote with an agreement. It's kind of like no double dealing with Democrats, right? That's part of it. I'm not saying that's the only thing, but that was kind of like one of the stipulations. In 2021, Democrats had all three chambers, right? Because they won in the 2020 election. By 2021, they had all three chambers. They had the House, they had the Senate, they had the White House, obviously. And within those 2 years, the Democrats did not want to work with any Republican requests unless it was obviously beneficial to them. So smart Republicans noticed that and said, wait, we can't keep having this type of strategy where if they're the majority, they win. And when they're the minority, they still win. That doesn't make any sense. We actually need to now play the game that they're playing, and that's kind of what these 20 Republicans wanted to assure with Kevin McCarthy by giving them their vote. And that's what the agreement was, apparently, because obviously Kevin McCarthy did receive the leadership, the Speaker of the House. So that's that. Now, what happened is that Kevin McCarthy kind of broke his promise, went back in his word, and he started doing these double dealings, which eventually, Matt was the primary guy who called him out and called for his removal. Let's take a look at the next video. Actually, in this video, it's not him actually going after him. In this video, it's just the aftermath, what kind of happened. You could see Matt trolling him here.
And Matt Gaetz has a lot of enemies in Washington, D.C. because he is a true MAGA patriot. And he was the one who, orchestrated the expulsion of Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, you may recall, because Kevin McCarthy is a swamp creature, and then later trolled him at the RNC.
Speaking. What night are you speaking? Are you speaking tonight? Hey, you're not. If you took that stage, you would get booed off. You would get booed off the stage.
Kevin McCarthy then repeated the smear against Matt Gaetz on CNN, knowing full well that it's a complete hoax and a scam and a shakedown because he is a swamp creature and Washington, D.C. is like a House of Cards episode.
So Matt's push to remove McCarthy made an obvious enemy of him and an enemy that does have a lot of pull and influence. Now, here's Kevin McCarthy just flat out denying it, or flat out refusing to say, Matt's not going to get approved. Watch this.
You know, we've had names like Rubio, Waltz, Gaetz even. I mean, what do you make of the choices so far?
I think the choices are very good except one. Look, Gates won't get confirmed. Everybody knows that.
Oh, Gates won't get confirmed, he says. And really sure, really confident. And sure enough, it happened. So clearly the Republican swamp creatures came out in force, which I believe hurts the MAGA cause because Matt clearly doesn't play favorites, and he's a MAGA guy, right? We've seen, with this current administration, how they play favorites and target the opposition. It's wrong. It's wrong to target one side while ignoring your own. That's hypocrisy, right? And it's also corruption. These positions have to be impartial. Lady Liberty has to be blind. Justice has to be blind in order to keep these institutions trustworthy. So I think Matt Gaetz, because he's able to call out both sides, it's a unique quality that's not seen in politics, to be quite honest with you. Now, one of the biggest swamp creatures, and there are many within the Republican leadership, is none other than Senate Minority Leader Mitch the Turtle McConnell. It's no secret McConnell is no fan of Trump. He pretended to be an ally, but as soon as the election took place and Trump lost, his true colors came out. Now, during the course of this year, McConnell announced he would not be seeking another term and would be retiring, leaving the Senate leadership spot open. 2 weeks ago, 3 people emerged to try to go for the Republican leadership. Senator John Thune of South Dakota, John Cornyn of Texas, and Rick Scott of Florida all wanted the opportunity to lead the Senate in the new coming year. Unfortunately, only one of these senators is more in line with the MAGA movement than the other two. With no surprise, Mitch McConnell's ally, Robert Thune, was selected in a secret Senate vote. Why does this need to be done in secret? I think it's pretty obvious, right? It allows people to still play politics and say, oh yeah, I voted this a certain way, and then they actually didn't. We don't know, right? Now, why isn't this the best choice for the Trump MAGA agenda? Let's see this next video and see if we can get some information or get a glimpse as to why.
But look, this is a private ballot, and the Senate is widely a chamber that is supposed to be immune from outside pressure, right? That's why these senators serve for 6 years. And to that point, the Senate has historically been somewhere that really does not have some of the pressure that Donald Trump has tried to put on it. You saw in the first term that the Senate really did act as a check and a balance on Trump. I think the big question that we have right now, can we expect the same from this Senate as we did from the Senate in 2017? And today is really the first big test of that. Rick Scott is clearly the one who is most aligned with Trump, the most in sync with Trump. Now, Trump, of course, has not come out. He has not endorsed yet in this race. There's still a very good chance that we could see Majority Leader Thune or Majority Leader Cornyn. But I think really that's going to be a big test and a big tell from the results we see today is how much senators feel like they have a mandate. And to that point, Trump has gone around talking a little bit about allowing these recess appointments. It would allow him to kind of bypass the Senate's authority to approve potential cabinet picks and other top-level administration officials. And some members, actually most members who I talked to last night said, look, we totally get that Trump wants to get people through the Senate quickly. We're 100% on board with that. But we have a responsibility to advise and consent. And you could tell these lawmakers, they do not want to give up that power that the Senate has.
Steph, what do you think about the sort of pressures that are being brought to bear? And is Thune a Trump guy, not a Trump guy, if that's how this all gets played out?
I mean, look, both Thune and Cornyn have had a very rocky relationship with the former president. I mean, there were times where, Trump was even threatening to try to mount a primary challenge against Thune just a few years ago. But of course, Thune and Cornyn also read the writing on the wall. They know that in today's day and age in the GOP, it's not acceptable for a Republican leader to not have a good relationship with the former president, now the president-elect. And so both have put in the time to kind of rebuild those relationships. And it's something that both of them talk about a lot to the press and also with their members, trying to prove that they are someone who can work, with the president and get things done on the Republican agenda. But there are still some who don't feel like it's enough.
Madam President, in the wake of recent tragic deaths of several African Americans at the hands of the police, our country has reached a turning point. Americans of every race, background, and political persuasion are calling for change. Too many Americans feel unsafe right now. Too many Americans live in fear that what happened to George Floyd could happen to their own fathers and sons and brothers. Too many Americans see in law enforcement officers individuals to be feared rather than trusted. Americans are ready for all of that to end. They want reform and increased accountability. They want to make sure that we are holding our law enforcement officers to the highest standards.
If Donald Trump is the Republican nominee, would you support him?
Well, I'm hoping, Leanne, to have other options. And
verdict in the Trump trial could come next week. If he's convicted, could you support him still?
I'm not. We'll see how the trial comes out. I'm not weighing in on that.
But it's certainly not helpful, and it's not presidential. President needs to stay focused. We've got an agenda.
Have you reached out to the White House to express that?
I haven't reached out specifically with this latest tweet, but I think the White House is fully aware of what many of us think in terms of the use of social media, and I think the president, I'd like to see him confine it to talking about the issues that the American people care about in his agenda, which is jobs and the economy and tax reform and infrastructure and health care reform.
We just heard from the White House saying,
I don't trust this man has America's best interests at heart. But only time will tell. But he does sound an awful lot like this guy.
That doesn't mean the president is free from fault. The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action by President Trump. Accept his share of responsibility, quell the brewing unrest, and ensure President-elect Biden is able to successfully begin his term.
And that's the primary reason, right there, why Matt Gaetz did not support Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. And it's that reason why Rhino Republicans were upset at Matt Gaetz's nomination as Attorney General. As a conservative Republican myself, we don't need establishment rhinos. We need MAGA people who will put this country ahead of their own gains. If not, we're really no different than the Democratic Party. Now, going back to Matt Gaetz, it's being reported that 4 primary senators vowed not to confirm Gaetz no matter what. Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, John Curtis of Utah, and of course Mitch McConnell, if I'm not mistaken, he's from Kentucky, were the 4 that caused were the cause of Matt removing himself from Attorney General consideration.
Let's actually read here about the Republicans that allegedly were responsible for refusing to get on board with Matt Gaetz becoming Attorney General. Longtime Senate GOP leader Mitch McConnell was reportedly among the 4 Republican senators to sink Matt Gaetz' bid to be confirmed as Attorney General. According to the New York Times, Jonathan Swan, quote, Gaetz told people close to him that he concluded after conversation with senators and their staff that there were at least 4 Republican senators who were implacably opposed to his nomination: Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Susan Collins of Maine, Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, and John Curtis of Utah. Yeah, so again, you know, these are Republicans that are members of the swamp, right? All of them are swamp creatures. And it's no surprise that they basically said that no matter what, we are not going to confirm Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. Now, what does this mean? Right? What does it mean politically? What's going on here? Well, first and foremost, what it means is that the Republican Senate majority is smaller than we think, okay? Republicans have 53 seats to the Democrats 47 seats, but the reality is it's closer to 50-50 because when it comes to Trump's agenda and the things that he wants to do, right, the things that are more controversial, again, like, for example, to nominate Matt Gaetz to be the Attorney General, right, the things that the swamp is not going to be okay with, right, the anti-establishment agenda, yeah. It's much closer to basically having an even Senate, right, because, again, all it takes is 4 of these Republicans to say, nope, we're not going to get on board with it, and that can basically sink anything that Trump wants to do, right? And this is the first time that they've shown before Trump is even in office that they are willing to do that. So we know that the swamp creatures are willing to revolt against Trump's agenda.
So I want to remind everyone that Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski were both members who approved the impeachment trials of President Trump back in 2018. And both voted to convict Trump in his second impeachment trial. They didn't vote yes on his first impeachment trial, but I remember Collins saying she wanted to hear and see the evidence, which gave legitimacy to the harassment that was being put on President Trump. So she was part of the, that opening of the door, if you will, that allowed the left to go through with that sham impeachment trial, right? So these are your typical and usual establishment Republicans that you can never count on to stand strong and stand firm. They're the reasons why we have a lot of losses when it comes to us as a party, right? Democrats usually stay lock and step, for exceptions of Joe Manchin, maybe Kristen Sinema. But for the rest of them, they all stand lock and step. We always have 4, 5, 6 Republicans, like Mitt Romney. I'm surprised Mitt Romney's not on this list, who just, I mean, they're Republicans by name only. Right? Now, one of the reasons why Trump has such a loyal base with people like me is because he's not the status quo politician. All my life, I've heard people say politicians are corrupt and cannot be trusted. And yet, we continue to vote for career politicians versus the businessman, the successful businessman, who is coming in from the outside and trying to change how things work so that it actually does benefit the American people. Insanely enough, Trump has been met with every opposition imaginable. While he continues to fight for us, self-interested politicians continue to undermine the will of the people, right? Because we elected him, right? We want to see a change. Just today, it was reported that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has worked with GOP members to approve some of Biden's judges as he gets ready to exit. Let's take a look at this article from the Huffington Post. And it says, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer reached a late-night deal with Republicans on Wednesday to speed up the process of voting on some of President Joe Biden's remaining judicial nominees, while agreeing not to hold votes on others. The agreement, cut by Schumer, independent Senators Kristen Sinema of Arizona, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, and some Republicans, means Schumer is teeing up votes on 9 of Biden's district court nominees and planning to confirm all of them when the Senate returns from Thanksgiving. GOP senators agreed not to impose delays on the process for these 9 nominees. Schumer plans to hold votes on more of the president's court picks, not part of this deal once those 9 are done. The Senate Judiciary Committee on Thursday reported out of 5 additional district court nominees and another 2 are slated to get hearings in December. All will likely get confirmation votes. So here we've got these guys do everything and anything to stop us, and we've got Republicans that just play along with them. Sure, no problem. Hey, you need this right as soon as, Joe's out the door? No problem. We'll work with you. We'll get you through. It's absolutely insane. It's an insane strategy. Now, I'm not sure if it's just me, but I feel like Democrats get a lot accomplished when they are or aren't in power because, good amount of Republican leadership is not really MAGA, right? And MAGA is not Trump. Yeah, he coined the phrase, if you will, but MAGA just means that you love your country and you just want to see your country at the best that it can be. You want whatever resources, whatever, extra, you want security for your country. You want your country to be at the top? Do you want your leadership to care more about your country than other countries, right? It doesn't mean that you can't care for other countries in a way, but you got to make sure that your own are taken care of first. I mean, as family people, that's what we do. We take care of our own family before we take care of others. That's just, I don't know what's so weird about that. And anyhow, in the end, I'm actually really salty about Matt Gaetz because we just allowed the establishment, Republicans and Democrats, to win one, to be honest with you. Imagine if this had happened with Brett Kavanaugh. How different would the Supreme Court look? Perhaps not much different, or perhaps another middle of the aisle type of judge who would lean towards the left a little more. Who knows, right? Imagine if they had gone away with this on Trump. Trump's been accused of sexual assault as well. I mean, didn't he just lose a ridiculous civil case just a few months ago? We cannot allow these types of tactics to succeed with the very same people that we're trying to get rid of. Because to be honest with you, I feel like they got one over on us with Matt Gaetz. Now, some people may say he has no morals, he's a pedophile or whatever the case may be. Again, accusations do not imply guilt. And to be honest, if the left hadn't tried this multiple times already, I might be inclined to refrain from supporting him myself. But because they've abused this strategy, it falls on deaf ears. And frankly, it's appalling, and it takes away from actual victims. It's a disgusting strategy that unfortunately isn't going to stop, especially since they've tasted victory. This takes away from actual victims, and that's the thing that bothers me. There are actual victims that happen, and sometimes they don't get believed. Why? Because of BS like this. Now, as a consolation prize yesterday, Trump nominated former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi to be his Attorney General. I've been watching her for about the same time as Matt, and she also comes across as a MAGA person, right? Especially when she represented Trump during the trials of his first impeachment. She was stellar. So, I'm pretty, it sucks about Matt, but wow, what a replacement to have to get Pam Bondi, right? And the left thinks that they think that they won with Matt Gaetz, but guess what? A lot of them are like panicking also about Pam, and they're panicking in a different way because they don't have dirt on Pam. So let's check this out.
When Republicans take back the White House, you know what's going to happen? The Department of Justice, the prosecutors will be prosecuted, the bad ones. The investigators will be investigated because the deep state, last term for President Trump, they were hiding in the shadows. But now they have a spotlight on them, and they can all be investigated. Murderers from Venezuelan prisoners coming straight into our country. They are coming to a town near you. It should scare and terrify everyone in this country. This is just one big press conference trying to smear Donald Trump, trying to hurt Donald Trump. Listen, all the rights here, I'm a prosecutor, former prosecutor. Yeah, all the rights here go to the defendant because it's his liberty at stake, and that has not been happening in this courtroom. This case should have never, ever been brought.
Pam Bondi is exactly what I was saying in the last segment that we should all fear, because she's competent. We may not agree with her ideologically, but she actually knows how to do this job. So if anyone on the Democratic side or anyone who cared about liberty or justice was thinking, well, maybe Matt Gaetz will screw this up and that'll give us some time. No, Pam Bondi knows what she's doing. She knows what she's doing about immigration. Remember, Florida is one of those states that's been very aggressive about migrants and deportation and moving people to different states and everything else like that. Florida has enacted all sorts of rules and laws to curtail students and what they can do on campuses and finding legal justifications for manipulating education money. She is a dangerous and effective pick, and that's frankly worse than what we would have got with Matt Gaetz, even with the deplorable moral background that he has.
I actually had the pleasure of seeing Pam Bondi speak. It was her and Kellyanne Conway at the Women for Trump rally back in 2019, and really smart lady, great speaker, both her and Kellyanne Conway. So I got to see them live, which was pretty cool. But I'm not gonna lie. I'm actually really excited for almost all of these picks. It's almost like watching an NFL draft, but only better because we get to see the left and the DC swamp rats squirm with just about every announcement. Now, I want to leave you guys with this reminder of how corrupt certain members of the Republican Party are. That someone like Mitch McConnell essentially blackmailed President Trump during the second impeachment trial. So believe me when I say, regardless if it's Matt or Pam or anybody else. We need someone who will not allow people to get away with corruption on either side of the political spectrum. So before I let you go, I just want to say, God bless you guys. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. God bless you. God bless our country. God bless Donald Trump. And I will see you guys on the next video. Meanwhile, check out this video as we close off. Take care. Bye-bye.
So in last night's show and on previous shows, we've told you about the cases of two men, Julian Assange and John Carreyrou. Julian Assange is a kind of international journalist. John Carreyrou is a former CIA officer. We should be totally blunt and tell you we're not sure we share the politics of either man. But both of their cases tell you something really important about what's going on in this country, about what matters, and about what the people in charge would like to prevent you from doing. Julian Assange and John Carreyrou both went to jail for telling the truth. Neither one stole classified documents from the U.S. government. Neither one of them hacked into anything. Julian Assange told you a lot about what the U.S. government was doing abroad and told you everything about what the DNC was doing to rig its own primaries back in 2016. Remember the WikiLeaks dump? You know about that because of Julian Assange. And by the way, if you're a Bernie Sanders voter, assuming any of those watching tonight, you probably were glad to know that. Everyone else was lying to you. Julian Assange brought you information that you had a right to know. John Carreyrou, meanwhile, told the truth about what our military and our intel agencies were doing during the Iraq War. Again, you may not agree with his position, but what he said was true. And that matters above all because truth is and must be a defense. If you say something true, you shouldn't be punished because we should value truth above all. In both cases, those men went to prison. And in both cases tonight, as one of his final acts as president, Donald Trump has the opportunity to make that right, to pardon both of them. We told you that last night. We told you it before. We're hearing tonight that neither man, particularly Julian Assange, we don't know if this is true, is likely to get a pardon. Why? Well, apparently because Republicans in the Senate, and by Republicans in the Senate we mean Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, the leader of Republicans in the Senate, has sent word over to the White House, if you pardon Julian Assange, we are much more likely to convict you in an impeachment trial. Now, is it legal to hold that over a president's head? We're not lawyers, we don't know. It's certainly wrong. But more than that, it tells you everything about their priorities. At a time when this country in some ways is coming apart, we're at a pivot point in American history. And if you're watching this show, you probably feel pretty threatened, and for good reason. There are people on the other channels saying they're going to hunt you down like a terrorist. At that moment, what is Mitch McConnell, your designated defender in the United States Senate, worrying about? He's worrying about protecting the uniparty in Washington, not his party and the Democratic Party in permanent Washington. They're the reason both these men have been locked up, because both these men embarrassed permanent Washington. That's their crime. And his priority in the final hours of the Trump administration is to make certain that they remain punished for doing that. It tells you everything. We don't know what's going to happen in the end. We've got a number of hours left for the president to make that decision. But we want you to know how that decision is being made, because it's deeply revealing.